Louise Valliere, a magician, ends up summoning a human with an explosion from another world when she is tasked to summon a familiar, a form of magical creature who acts as a companion for magicians. In the world of Halkagenia, Tristane Academy of Magic is home to a fresh class of second-year students where a teacher is demonstrating a simple form of magic. After the explanation, the teacher calls on Louise, a pink-haired girl, which startles her classmates because of her magic's unpredictability. Despite the warnings, Louise casts the spell, causing stones to illuminate and an ensuing explosion, and this incident earns her the nickname Louise the Zero due to her zero success rate. Meanwhile, at the principal's office, Osman is delighted that the school year has been going on smoothly while his secretary, Longbuell, gets angry at him for his perverted attempts. After the classes, Louise meets with her rival Kirch, who berates her for her zero skills. But Louise claims that she will summon an outstanding familiar in tomorrow's class. The next day, as the summoning ceremony begins to conjure a familiar spirit, Louise's unorthodox attempt results in yet another explosion, revealing a sleeping boy afterward. The boy's commoner appearance surprises the students and they yet again laugh at Louise for summoning a peasant as her familiar. Louise wishes to retry, but her teacher denies her the chance while the boy wakes up and Louise and her classmates can't understand the language of the boy she summoned. The boy attempts to escape, but Louise grabs him and establishes a familiar contract by kissing him, causing him immense pain before he faints with a rune on his hand. The boy then awakens in Louise's room later and urges Louise to take him back home, but she ignores him, instructing him to do laundry. Unfamiliar with the language, he tries asking about her identity, but Louise tries to silence him with a spell that, in typical Louise fashion, triggers an explosion. Unexpectedly, this explosion has a side effect. They can now understand each other. The boy reveals his name is Sato Hiraga and questions why he's in this situation, making Louise clarify that she summoned him, and Sato notices the rune on his hand. Meanwhile, the teacher realizes that the rune on Sato's hand is an extremely rare anomaly. On the other hand, Louise expresses disappointment at not summoning a dragon or griffin. Sato flees and dashes outdoors, passing by Louise's classmates Gitch, who is busy flirting with a girl, and Kirch. Pursued by Louise and the others, Sato is lifted into the air by Gitch's magic. During this ordeal, Sato realizes the presence of two moons in the sky, which makes him finally realize that he is no longer on Earth. In a flashback, it is revealed that, on Earth, Sato stumbled upon a peculiar green object in the street, and when he touched it, he was transported to Halkagenia, setting the course for his current predicament. Chained in Louise's room, he explains his situation, but she disregards his claims, asserting that contracts are binding, and commands him to perform tasks like cleaning and laundry, while Sato's protest falls on deaf ears, who reluctantly sleeps on a straw mat as Louise dozes off. The next morning, they have breakfast in the dining hall, and Sato is amazed by the lavish spread, though Louise informs him it's reserved for nobles and he is on the floor as her familiar. After breakfast, they encounter Kirch, who annoys Louise, making her order Sato to bring her some tea. While bringing tea, Sato meets Siesta, a maid from the academy, and learns that only nobles possess magic, while commoners do not. As they converse, Gitch interrupts, requesting a pie, and Sato decides to take revenge on him as he recalls the last night. Gitch is busy charming Montmorency nearby, though she's cautious due to rumors of his involvement with a first-year girl. Gitch denies it, but before he can finish, Sato interjects and confirms Gitch's two-timing behavior, fueling Montmorency's suspicions. Sato also points out Katie, the girl from last night, leading to a confrontation. Accused of two-timing by Sato and confronted by both girls, Gitch receives a slap and becomes a subject of mockery among the students, which infuriates Gitch, and he issues a challenge for a duel. Louise finally returns and requests Sato to apologize, but he refuses. Disregarding Louise's belief that he cannot prevail against a noble, Sato proceeds with the duel. In the meantime, Instructor Colbert presents his research to Headmaster Osmond, who recognizes the legendary runes, and makes Colbert promise to keep this knowledge confidential. Concurrently, Gitch initiates the duel by summoning a metal Valkyrie soldier to fight on his behalf. The Valkyrie delivers a forceful blow to Sato's abdomen, causing him to stumble. Despite Louise's concern and appeals, Sato repeatedly rises after each fall. Gitch eventually offers Sato a sword, which he accepts despite Louise's protests. As Sato wields the sword, the rune on his hand emits a radiant glow, and his wounds heal magically, enabling him to effortlessly dismantle the Valkyrie. Despite Gitch's attempt to deploy more Valkyries, Sato overpowers them all and advances towards Gitch, making him surrender. However, once Sato releases the sword, he falls into a deep slumber and wakes up 3 days later in Louise's room. Siesta delivers food to him and reveals that Louise, who is now asleep at her desk, has been caring for him constantly without rest. As the days go by, Sato becomes increasingly frustrated at being tasked with Louise's laundry, while he also mentions Siesta's claim of looking after him without sleep. But Louise dismisses it, asserting that she's merely fulfilling her role as a master overseeing a familiar. During class, Sato joins Louise and learns about the nickname Louise the Zero from his classmates and takes the opportunity to tease her about it as well, even composing a humorous song making Louise withhold food from him. That night, Sato's hunger prompts him to pester Louise until she concedes, but his unintentional chest-related remark in a cheer enrages her, causing Louise to banish him to the hallway for the night. Luckily, Siesta discovers him and takes him to the kitchen for some leftovers, where the chefs regard Sato as a point of pride for the commoners. After that, Siesta also reveals to Sato that Louise had actually ordered expensive medicine for his recovery. Later, as Sato prepares to sleep in the hallway again, Kirch Familiar, a salamander, appears and drags him to Kirch's room, where Kirch tries to seduce Sato, and just as she kisses him, Louise arrives to interrupt the scene. Louise pulls Sato back to her room by his ear and whips him like a dog. Damn, that is cruel. Sato, however, grabs her arm and teases her about being jealous, which earns him a knee to the groin from Louise, who confesses that she doesn't mind who he's with as long as it's not Kirch. Later, Sato clarifies the incident with the salamander, prompting Louise to joke that it's embarrassing for him as a supposed sword wielder. Sato explains that the duel with Gitch was his first sword fight, and his body moved on its own during the battle. The following day, Louise takes Sato to the town to buy a sword, while Kirch and Tabitha follow them secretly. At the shop, the sword he really likes costs 3,000 gold coins, a sum far beyond Louise's budget of 100 gold coins. Disheartened by the price, they settle for a cheaper, older sword, while Kirch decides to purchase the expensive sword for Sato as she has a crush on him. Later, Kirch and Louise present the swords to Sato, who is caught in their argument once again. Amidst their squabble, a voice unexpectedly interrupts them, telling the idiot women to be quiet, which makes Louise and Kirch direct their anger at Sato. But Tabitha reveals that the voice came from the sword itself. The sword is an intelligent sword, able to talk, and Sato is immediately drawn to it. Meanwhile, the sword introduces itself as Derflinger, who has been asleep for quite some time. Osmond receives a visit from Count Mott, a messenger from the royal palace, who warns the academy about an impending thief. That night, while Sato is doing laundry, Siesta joins him to help, expressing her gratitude and newfound courage in his presence. On his way back to Louise's room, Sato is once again tempted by Kirch into her room, where she offers him various items to him, but when he refuses, Kirch tackles him on the ground. Louise arrives just in time and catches them in the act and drags Sato away to scold him again. The following day, Louise has Sato wait among the other familiars while she attends class. Uncomfortable around the magical creatures, Sato eventually seeks solace with the chef, who provides him with food and informs him that Siesta has left the academy to work for Count Mott. In Louise's room, the talking sword Derflinger suggests that Siesta may become Mott's mistress due to the circumstances. After acquiring directions to Count Mott's mansion from Gitch, Sato embarks on a mission to rescue Siesta on his own. However, Count Mott proves resistant to the idea of letting Siesta go, sparking tension between Sato and Mott, but Siesta intervenes, diffusing the situation and pleading with Mott for Sato's forgiveness. Mott reveals his interest in a specific book, the Zerbst family's heirloom, and proposes trading Siesta for it. Sato rushes back to the academy, encountering Louise on the way, who brings him to her room, where she advises him to give up on Siesta, making Sato falsely comply. Once she falls asleep, Sato sneaks into Kirch's room to take the book, but Kirch asks Sato to date her in return, which infuriates Sato, prompting him to take the gold sword and ride to Mott's mansion on horseback. Tabitha observes his departure, and with Kirch's help, they wake Louise to inform her that her familiar is missing. At Count Mott's estate, Sato finds himself apprehended by guards and brought before the Count again. Drawing his sword, Sato realizes that he is unable to control it and is promptly subdued by Mott's water magic and ice arrows, but Louise storms into the room and detonates the arrow. Despite her best intentions, Louise attempts to take responsibility for Sato's actions, but Kirch takes the initiative, offering her family heirloom to Mott as compensation. The Count accepts the offer and releases Siesta. Soon, Sato realizes that the supposed book is a vintage porn magazine from 1975, leading to the realization that it likely originated from Sato's world, the same as his. Back at the academy, Siesta expresses gratitude with a kiss on Sato's cheek. Sato then attempts to express his thanks and apologize to Louise, who is already plotting the punitive measures, either 100 lashes with a whip or starvation until the brink of death. Meanwhile, at the Tristane Academy of Magic, Louise is engaged in training Sato for an upcoming familiar competition where the familiar has to perform an act to win the hearts of the audience. Louise decides that their act should involve Derflinger. Although Sato's previous inability to wield a sword effectively makes him worried, but he tries to practice, resulting in a comical failure. Later, Siesta encounters him and discusses the upcoming competition, mentioning that even Princess Henrietta will attend. Henrietta's arrival is met with great anticipation, and Sato observes that Louise seems to blush as she watches. As the evening approaches, Sato remains at a loss for a performance idea, and suggests that he should show off his laundry washing skill, which enraged Louise. Just in the nick of time, a knock on the door interrupts the situation, and a cloaked girl enters who turns out to be Henrietta. The princess embraces Louise, revealing their childhood friendship and the promise they made to support each other through tough times. Henrietta, in the present, informs Louise that she used her influence to absolve them of blame in the Count Maud incident. Before leaving, she embraces Louise and encourages Sato for the upcoming day, while Sato's attempt to sound impressive frustrates Louise, leading to a playful banter. Henrietta departs, emphasizing the value of freedom as a treasure. During the familiar competition the next day, all second-year students showcase their familiars, while Louise's introduction of Sato as a commoner prompts laughter. But Sato's attempt to restore order backfires, embarrassing him further. As Louise drags him off stage, Fauke targets the treasure room, but her golem is detected by Louise and Sato. Amid the chaos, Sato pushes Louise out of harm's way when the golem attacks and asks Louise to flee, but she refuses and casts a fireball, inadvertently creating a chaotic misfire. The spell not only nearly burns Sato but also damages the treasure vault's wall. Recognizing the opening, Fauke directs her golem to exploit the crack and breach the vault. In the meantime, Tabitha is declared the competition's winner, and Tabitha's dragon Sylph takes to the sky, displaying its flight, and the ground trembles from the golem's impact on the vault wall. As the wall cracks, Sylph and Tabitha rush to the scene, witnessing Fauke's escape with the stolen Staff of Destruction. Sylph swoops in to rescue Sato when the golem drops him, and Fauke manages to evade capture, leaving the aftermath. Louise attempts to apologize to Henrietta, who reassures her that she doesn't hold her responsible, and leaves, as the palace will be in disorder. As Henrietta departs, Louise shares her concerns about the rumors circulating regarding the royal court. Sato wonders why Louise didn't flee during their encounter with the golem, while Louise emphasizes that a mage who abandons their familiar is not a true mage. The next day, Louise is angry seeing Kirch feed Sato in class, while Kirch mentions Henrietta might be blamed for Fauke's actions since guards were reassigned to protect the princess. After that, Louise, Tabitha, and Kirch are summoned to the headmaster's office, where they learn of a suspicious person in a forest house. Louise and the others volunteer to retrieve the staff with guidance from Miss Longbill as the guards feel threatened by Fauke's magic. They set off, and Sato questions why a noble would be a thief, which makes Miss Longbill, a mage turned commoner, explain to him that not all mages are nobles. The group argues until Kirch gives Sato a golden sword, and he takes it at Kirch's insistence. At the abandoned house, they find the Staff of Destruction's box, but the golem reappears, ripping off the roof. Tabitha and Kirch magic are ineffective, which makes Tabitha call her dragon to flee. Outside, Louise's magic only causes a small explosion, and Louise decides to stay, with her intention to prove herself. The golem attack almost hits Louise, but Sato saves her and slaps her, emphasizing her safety matters more. Tearfully, Louise admits running away was due to fear of ridicule. Hearing Louise's words, Sato faces the golem with the golden sword but breaks it on impact. Sato, resorting to Derflinger, lights up his rune and dismembers the golem, which regenerates. Louise takes the Staff of Destruction's box, which turns out to be a rocket launcher. Sato identifies it, his rune glowing again, and fires it at the golem, obliterating it. Amid the celebration, Kirch hugs Sato, but Tabitha wonders about Fauke's whereabouts. Miss Longbill, actually Fauke, reveals herself, holding them at the rocket launcher point. Sato attempts to reach Derflinger, but Fauke exposes that she will use the Staff of Destruction destruction against them. Falke aims at them, yet the launcher fails to fire. Seizing the moment, Sato knocks her with Derflinger's hilt, as he knew the weapon's origin, with only one rocket like those from his world. After Falke is apprehended and the Staff of Destruction is returned, Sato is excluded from rewards due to his commoner status and seeks Osmond. Sato reveals that the staff's origin is a weapon from his world, making Osmond recall an incident 30 years ago involving a man wielding such a staff. The man's demise left the staff entombed with him, while another was presented to the royal court, making Sato worry about his future. During the dance party, Sato contemplates returning when Louise appears, ignoring others to approach him. As they dance, Louise acknowledges his origin and shows her gratitude for his help. Their dance continues, Louise blushing, while Derflinger notes this unique bond between master and familiar. At the royal palace, Henrietta confers the title of Chevalier upon Louise and expresses gratitude to Sato for his assistance, entrusting him with Louise's care. Extending her hand for a loyal vow, Sato, confused, kisses Henrietta on the lips, causing her to faint. Louise takes revenge. Henrietta then assigns them a mission to investigate rumors of commoner oppression by nobles. Louise proudly agrees but despises wearing commoner attire and facing financial limitations. Even though Sato proposes practical solutions, Louise's anger gets the best of them, which makes Louise depart alone, upset by the seemingly impossible task. As the sun sets, Sato discovers Louise sitting by a fountain, having lost their money in a casino. A man named Scarin appears, offering them a place to stay if Louise works at his Fairies of Charm Inn. There, Louise disguises herself as a waitress, and Sato assists by washing dishes with a girl named Jessica. Scarin announces a chip race week, promising the winner a magical bustier that can grant wealth, making Louise aims to win. But her noble pride clashes with serving commoners. During business hours, men make advances toward her, triggering her temper and making Scarin intervene, rescuing Louise from the awkward situation. That night, an exhausted Sato gives up the bed to Louise, but she's disturbed by bats and ends up sharing Sato's bed. The following day, Louise continues to struggle at her job, splashing wine on a customer and slapping another. Meanwhile, in the inn's kitchen, Sato discovers Jessica is Scarin's daughter. Louise grows jealous seeing them talk and noticing Jessica's well-endowed chest. Louise hurls a wine bottle at Sato, knocking him out. Later, Sato awakens in a private room with Jessica by his side, who realizes that he and Louise aren't siblings and probes for information. Sato plays mysterious, piquing Jessica's interest, but Louise interrupts them. Jessica questions Louise's poor performance at the inn due to her small breasts, motivating Louise to vow to win the chip race. A tax collector named Chelen arrives with guards, clearing out the inn and targeting Louise. Unaware of Chelen's reputation, Louise confronts him, and his inappropriate behavior leads to a scuffle, but with the royal permit, Louise forces Chelen to give up his money, winning the chip race. Later, Louise wears the bustier, and when Sato's compliments fall flat, she wishes for different words. Meanwhile, a mysterious man releases Falke, addressing her first as Falke and then as Matilda of South Gotha. During their journey back to school on horseback, Sato's unintentional grasp on Louise frustrates her, who elbows him off the horse. Seeing Tabitha and Kirch boarding a carriage, Kirch informs Louise and Sato about their trip to Tabitha's home. In the carriage, Kirch chats with Tabitha, who is also an overseas student, and shares her past as a troublemaker who was discarded, catching Tabitha's attention. A farmer halts them due to Lake Lagdorian overflooding, prompting a detour. Back at school, Sato observes Montmorency's anger at Gitch and spots a large pot that conceives an idea within him. On the carriage, Kirch notes flooded homes and recognizes Gallia's royal crest, implying Tabitha's identity, as they reach a mansion with the same crest. An elderly servant greets Tabitha as Charlotte, her strange alias, and Tabitha guides Kirch to wait in the living room, where a portrait resembling her father hangs above the fireplace. Percerin, the butler, serves Kirch tea and reveals Tabitha's real name, Charlotte. Kirch inquires about the use of a fake name and Charlotte's history, which makes Percerin recount the family's tragic past. Charlotte's father, the Duke of Orleans, was killed in a succession dispute after the previous king's death. King Joseph's allies targeted Charlotte, poisoning her mother at a dinner party, which induced insanity, and the mother sacrificed herself to protect Charlotte. Meanwhile, Tabitha visits her deranged mother, who mistakes her for the doll named Charlotte, and Percerin explains Tabitha's name originated from a doll her mother gifted her. Despite her mother's tragedy, Charlotte endured dangerous missions, receiving the Chevalier title and studying abroad, a way to dispose of her. Kerch parallels Charlotte's plight with her own and maintains composure when Tabitha returns. As night falls at Tristane, Sato turns the giant pot into a bath. Siesta, passing by, investigates and is surprised when Sato emerges from the water, causing her to spill tea, and expresses interest in joining, taking his joke seriously. Siesta disrobes, and though embarrassed initially, Sato warms up to the idea. She asks about his world and mentions her sky-falling ancestor who became part of this kingdom. Louise searches for Sato, shocked to find him and Siesta in the bath, runs away unnoticed, while Siesta leaves, thanking Sato for the enjoyable time. Meanwhile, Montmorency doses Gitch's drink with a love potion which Louise accidentally drinks. Later, when Sato returns to Louise's room, a sudden change within Louise makes her confess to Sato, and Montmorency observes Louise's emotional outburst. Tabitha receives a new mission, and Kerch offers to accompany her and comforts Tabitha as she cries in her sleep, having experienced much hardship. Under the potion's influence, Louise becomes possessive of Sato, fearing he'll see other girls, even though she lets him go to do laundry but pleads for his swift return due to her loneliness. Earlier, Montmorency had explained Louise's potion mishap, with uncertain duration. Siesta sees Louise clinging to Sato, triggering Louise's jealousy, although Sato attempts to explain, but fails in his attempts to pacify either girl. Pursuing Siesta, he confesses about the potion, but she doubts him due to legal prohibitions. Returning to Louise's room, he finds her awaiting him in a nightgown, making Sato uncomfortable. Sato rushes to consult Montmorency and Gitch, who claim that they need the spirit's tears to undo the potion. Blackmailing her with potion laws, Sato convinces her to accompany him there for a solution. The following day, the group reaches Lagdorian, discovering the town submerged by the lake. The water spirit initially rejects Montmorency's plea, but Sato's sincere request changes her mind and reveals ongoing attacks on her, while Sato vows to repel the attackers in exchange for her tears. That night, they hide in the forest, spotting two cloaked figures near the water, which makes Sato prepare to attack alone. But Gitch suggests a coordinated approach. Sato's surprise assault and Gitch's magic fail against the opponents, even with Sato's activated rune. However, Louise intervenes, unleashing her explosive magic which uncloaks the figures, revealing Kerch and Tabitha as the unexpected assailants. Recognizing each other, both parties share their motives. Kerch and Tabitha claim that they are targeting the water spirit under Tabitha's family orders. Sato suggests Montmorency call the spirit again to learn why the flooding occurs. The spirit reveals its anger over the theft of the Ring of Envari by Cromwell, making Sato vow to retrieve it, and earns its trust due to being the Gandalfer. The spirit provides the tears to revert Louise's state, yet the Gandalfer concept remains puzzling. Despite the potion's effects vanishing, Louise's anger towards Sato persists. Their confrontation is interrupted by Henrietta floating through the window. In another place, Fauke and an associate meet someone identified as Cromwell. Henrietta arrives in Louise's room with a serious request and discloses her upcoming political marriage to a German noble for an alliance. Despite her own desires, Henrietta claims that she prioritizes the country's interests, but she needs Louise to send a letter sent to the Albion Prince Wales in secret, as its discovery could jeopardize the Germanian engagement. Henrietta also informs the duo that Albion is in political turmoil, and their one mistake can threaten Prince's life. Henrietta also asks Gitch, who eavesdropped, to accompany Louise and Sato, surprising them. Sato discusses his concerns about Gandalfer with Siesta, who suggests consulting history expert Colbert. He explains that the void element and the Gandalfer are tied to a legendary mage. Before bed, Sato encourages Louise about their mission, promising to protect her, which makes Louise blush, but she suggests that it is his role to protect her. The next day, as they prepare to set out, Louise examines the Ruby of Water ring given by Henrietta. Gitch's familiar Verdante interrupts, chasing the ring. A gust of wind and a man on a griffon named Ward save the situation and call Louise his fiancé, astonishing Sato and Gitch both. As they journey, Ward explains his special involvement upon learning of Louise's need for an escort. They reach an inn where Louise clarifies that her engagement was decided by her parents, yet her admiration of Ward's makes Sato uncomfortable, making Derflinger jokingly question if he's in love. During dinner, Ward praises Louise for having a human as a familiar, and reveals knowledge about Sato's previous conquests. Intrigued by Sato, Ward challenges him to a fight, which Sato accepts. After that, Ward takes Louise to his room, while Sato learns from Derflinger that he is indeed the Gandalfer. Sato's skepticism is countered by Derflinger's assertion that their partnership is no coincidence. The sword claims Sato's power to wield weapons at will, yet victory depends on his skill. Louise and Wards recall a childhood memory when he comforted her after a scolding from her father and acknowledges her unique power and proposes marriage after their mission, seeking her protection. He leans in for a kiss but halts when Louise says Sato's name, causing Wards to retreat. He leaves, expecting her heart to lean his way eventually. Below, as Gitch faces rejection from yet another girl, masked observers resembling Wards and Falke watch. The next day, Sato and Wards have a duel with Sato rapidly attacking Wards, yet Wards counters him using his agility. Sato gains speed using the wall, thrusting at Wards, but as they clash, Wards deems Sato an amateur, thrusting Sato into barrels by using his sword and a spell simultaneously. After that, Wards asserts Sato can't protect Louise against a true mage. Overwhelmed by his loss against Wards, Sato weeps, fearing he can't protect Louise. Worried about Sato, Louise discovers him crying, but when she tries to comfort him, Sato becomes infuriated and they part on bad terms. At night, Falke attacks Gitch and Sato, while Wards and Louise head to the Albion port, reluctantly leaving Sato and Gitch behind. Wards reveals Albion's civil war due to noble rebellion. During the fight, as Sato and Gitch fall, Kirch and Tabitha rescue them in the nick of time. Villagers' arrival forces Falke to flee, claiming to have stalled enough time. Sato asks about Louise and Wards at the pier, learning they departed. Desperate, Sato attempts to reach the ship but realizes it's already gone, and Sato screams Louise's name in frustration. Aboard, Louise hears something but Wards reassures her, making her accept his marriage proposal, determined to protect her. At the pier, Sato doubts Falke's claim of stalling, and Gitch suspects that Falke and Wards might be working together, while Verdant emerges from underground. Arriving in Albion, masked knights question Louise and Wards at a church, and Louise uses the Ruby of Water as Henrietta's emissary. The masked man, revealed as Prince Wales, presents the Ruby of Wind, forming a rainbow. In private, Wales reads Henrietta's letter and exchanges one with Louise, and explains the Reconquista's role in the rebellion and civil war. Wales entrusts Louise with another message and pledges to protect the country to the end. With their mission accomplished, Wards proposes to Louise that they should marry right now, but Louise declines. However, Wards' associate brainwashes Louise into a puppet, seeking her void power. At the wedding, Louise subconsciously halts it while Sato and the group, aided by Verdante, interrupt the ceremony. The brainwashing fades, and knights, manipulated by the associate, oppose Sato. Wards stabs Wales, who dies in the process, but Sato activates his Gandalfer power, and Derflinger absorbs Wards' magic and injures Wards, who steals Wales' letter and escapes as the church crumbles. Kirch and Tabitha save the group from destruction, and they return to Sylph while Sato kisses Louise. Louise informs Henrietta about Wales, resulting in the cancellation of her wedding with a German noble, and she later alerts Osmond about Reconquista, gaining insights into void magic and Gandalfer. Despite this, Sato and Louise engage in a trivial argument, making Sato depart and meet Siesta, inquiring about a dragon from another world. Sato accompanies Siesta to Tarbes, her hometown. Siesta provides Sato with a map indicating the location of the wings of the dragon. Kirch, Tabitha, Gitch, and their familiars join in on the journey to find it. They meet Professor Colbert and Louise in a cave and venture deeper inside. There, they discover the dragon, a cherished heirloom of Siesta's family. To their astonishment, Sato finds a tombstone with a Japanese inscription, revealing that the dragon is actually a World War II Japanese A6M0 fighter. The revelation follows that Siesta's great-grandfather was a Japanese individual magically transported to Halkaginia. Colbert explains that 2 dragons flew during a solar eclipse, but one vanished due to timing issues. The group speculates that if the other pilot returned home, this might be Sato's opportunity to return to Japan, leaving Louise baffled. In the aftermath of Wales' death, Princess Henrietta reports the escalating conflict to her mother, who shares that Germania has decided to cancel the intended wedding, and they eventually dispense with the formalities. Marion consoles her daughter, acknowledging the loss of Henrietta's beloved. In the midst of their conversation, a messenger arrives with urgent news for the monarchs. Returning to the academy, the group manages to bring the fighter back, and Sato approaches Professor Colbert with a request for some dragon's blood, which, in reality, is gasoline needed to fuel the aircraft. Later on, Gitch informs Louise about the alarming development that Albion has transformed into the new state of the Reconquista, announcing its declaration of war against Tristane. Meanwhile, in Albion, Cromwell, now the newly declared emperor, gathers his followers and emphasizes the might of the Ring of Invari, and reveals his grand plan to conquer the entire continent, beginning with the colonization of Tristane. Cromwell aims to execute this ambitious scheme during the upcoming solar eclipse, which is mere 3 days away. Sado informs Louise of his impending departure in 3 days, aiming to return home during the solar eclipse, but Louise appears indifferent, infuriating Sado. He waits for her return from a meeting, where Osmond announces the war's inevitability, leading to the Academy's closure. Henrietta forms a military force, recruiting Academy boys, and suggests that she will lead the front lines. Elsewhere, Louise finds Sado asleep, bidding him farewell. The next morning, Sado reads Louise's letter firing him while Louise joins the war effort with the princess. In Tarbes, Siesta remembers the upcoming eclipse when Sado may return home when an Albionian battleship with dragon knights arrives and Cromwell readies his knights for the war. The following day, aided by Colbert and Tabitha, Sado boards his fighter plane when he is informed about the war and Louise taking part in the battle. Princess Henrietta leads the Tristan military against the incoming Albion force, whose forces give them a hard time. Meanwhile, instead of heading directly for the eclipse, Sado eliminates Albion's dragon knights, who can't match his plane's speed. Sado exhausts his ammo and confronts wards on a winged dragon. Gitch, Tabitha, and Kirch defeat Fauke, allowing Sado to engage wards alone. Louise witnesses their mid-air battle, while Kirch, Tabitha, and Louise use Sylph to approach Sado. Guided by Tabitha's magic, Louise leaps from Sylph to Sado's plane and finally confronts Sado about her feelings. Moved by her feelings for Sado, Louise unlocks her void magic, casting the powerful explosion spell. This annihilates Albion's aerial force, including wards, but the eclipse also ends. After the eclipse ends, the Zero fighter is nearly destroyed and Cromwell tries to control Kirch and Tabitha with the Ring of Invari, but is thwarted by Gitch. At the wreckage, Sado and Louise argue about his firing but end up kissing, renewing their contract. After the battle, Louise, Tabitha, Kirch, and Gitch receive medals from the princess. Louise eagerly searches for Sado to show him her medal but can't find him. Kirch is surrounded by admirers. Tabitha reclaims the Ring of Invari, and Montmorency and Gitch quarrel as usual while Louise discovers Sado conversing with Siesta and punishes him. That's all for today. If you enjoyed our video, do give us a like and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content.